Hi everybody, it's me, Vie Darling. Welcome to my channel. Well, first things first, I'm Vie Darling, the Cosmic Queen, and your astrological intergalactic interpreter. And this is gonna be our video for sidereal Libra season. And what I'm realizing just today, like, I'm so glad that I decided to wait and like experiment with this a little bit, but because we're transitioning into using sidereal versus tropical, I think that it just makes the most sense to, instead of starting with the start of the astral season, to start at the beginning of each month. So moving forward, this is going to be like, Libra season, but Scorpio season actually starts on the 16th of November sidereally. And so when we get to talking about, and I have my calendar out, it's been a while since we've seen that, but we need it for what we're going to be talking about in this video. Well, on the 1st of November is when we're going to start that new schedule, where it will be the energy for November, and like talking about all of the astrology that's going to be happening then. And then with the cards, we're going to do that with this video too, and just see how that works. But then we're still going to do the new moon video, still going to do the full moon video, but it is going to be centered in sidereal astrology. And I have some things that I want to say about sidereal astrology too that's going to be very helpful. And so yeah, we're going to talk about October's energy. There are going to be some things that, like, we have a lot of planets going direct in October, but we're going to talk about that more like when we get to it. And then we have Samhain, which is Halloween, on the 31st. We're going to talk about that because we're going to actually be doing a very special Club Cosmos. So that's going to be like live recorded here on Zoom, and y'all can come. Like, the workshop's going to be on Zoom, and everybody who subscribes to the Patreon is obviously going to be able to have access to this. And then different tiers get different assets from this. So you'll be able to attend and watch the recording if you are subscribed to Patreon for Samhain, but you will not get like the workbook or the notes or anything like that. And it's actually going to happen in person. So it will be recorded virtually, but it will be primarily in person. Yeah, and actually, I just don't know that the recording will be saved for Patreon subscribers, but it will not go on YouTube. So in the meantime, let's just get into things. I already prayed, but I'm going to pray again. Thank you, Spirit, Universe, Goddess, God, for all that you do, guiding me, guiding us. Lead me where you need me. Express what must be expressed through me. Guide me to what it is you would have me say, what it is you would have me be. Remove my fear and ego that I may be of service to the collective, and allow me to transgress the boundaries of my ego and my mind in order to actualize and realize you here in the material earth plane. Speak through me what messages you would have me speak, reveal what it is you would have revealed, and use me as your instrument. Thank you. Amen. Ashe. So yeah, let's just get into it, right? I would just rather get into it. So yeah, it's gonna actually like require so much more preparation from me for this official shift into sidereal. But I think that it's fine. It's okay, because we'll be doing more workbooks and stuff like that. But so y'all already know we're gonna start with astrology reading, which is going to be available also for YouTube. And then we're going to do the spread for the second tier, and we're going to do some clarifiers for the third tier of Patreon. So if you want to find out more, I would suggest, subscribing to the Patreon. It's pretty inexpensive, but if you can, I just appreciate your support in general. So let's talk about it. So the 17th of October, 2021, that is the beginning of Libra season, sidereally. However, we have the new moon in Libra before that. And in fact, let's go to, we have the new moon on the 6th of October. So that's coming up next week. Actually, that's coming up next Wednesday. I'm filming this on the 29th of September, excuse me. But so the sun is actually still going to be in Libra for a while there. And obviously it's going to be, as you can see, it's, hold on. It's going to be conjunct exactly the moon, because that's how we get a new moon, is when the sun and the moon are directly aligned with one another. And here we're seeing that it's going to be at 19 degrees and 14 or 15 seconds. And so could have paused my camera, but I chose not to. So I want to look up this Sabian symbol for, yes, I want to look up the Sabian symbol for Virgo at 19 degrees, because it applies. I find the Sabian symbols to just be like super, super helpful. Virgo at 19. And it kind of like, okay, the phase 169 Virgo 19 degrees is swimming race, the stimulation that comes from a group effort towards a spiritual goal. When a person has become an expert swimmer, they have symbolically learned how to operate in a new element. And let me tell you, when I think about spirituality and I think about energy and I think about the ether, I think about swimming in a sea, like the sea of consciousness, that is all around us, the sea of energy that's all around us. And when we are aligning ourselves with lower vibrations, we can really tend to get mired, and it becomes very heavy closer towards the bottom of the sea. And that's the truth. Like at the bottom of the sea, there is the most pressure, right? So that's actually exactly what happens if you're not willing to lighten yourself, that you can swim in a higher vibration, you can swim in a less dense part of the cosmic sea, the sea of consciousness, all that, like the sea of spirit, you're going to be in those heavier parts where the sea monsters are. And that actually reminds me of Captain Barbossa in Pirates of the Caribbean. I think he says to Elizabeth Swann, he says, here there be monsters. And like that's what happens when you're at the bottom of the sea. And to be honest, like with those pirates, they were obviously obsessed with like money, they were obviously obsessed with like staying alive forever. They were like, they did not have good moral or ethic compasses. Very material people. And of course, yes, they are the protagonists, but if we step outside of the framing of the narrative, they're actually like very antagonistic people. And so I think that's something that we need to bear in mind in regards to like narcissism and codependent relationships that we get indoctrinated into, and that we find ourselves in, because whether we be the narcissist or the codependent person, the supplier, and really in any relationship like that, we can fill any of those roles from time to time at any given point. at any given point in time, we can be the narcissist, we can be the supplier. And that's the nature of being stuck in those cycles, is like every role that you fill is toxic in its own way. And like, if it's a circle, just like we see like with the zodiac, it's a circle. These are polar opposites, but they meet in the center. They're two sides of the same coin. So the codependent supplier is also toxic and also embodies some of the characteristics and traits of the narcissist, because they're both caught in that cycle. If either one of them chooses to get out of that cycle, then, you know, they will no longer be in that cycle. But they're there for a reason, and it's because they haven't yet figured out how to let go of those traits. And the traits may vary and they may look different from person to person, and they may be expressed differently, but underlying it is the same fear-driven motives, right? So with this, the stimulation that comes from group effort towards a spiritual goal, symbolically, the swimmer has learned to operate in a new element. It's like when you're learning to swim and you get thrown into the water, and like, or okay, so in the ocean, if you just like let yourself go and you stop fighting against the current, then you will float to the top. And that's what has to happen here. It's like, stop fighting against spirit and you will float to the top. Like, that's the energy of October, specifically with that new moon in Libra. That's the first transit that we get, and that we're going to be interacting with is excuse me. This element, water, represents the ever-flowing stream of psychic energy, and in a sense, at least, the astral world. In a still deeper sense, people are now able, mystically speaking, to cross the river and reach the other shore, or to swim back toward the source. And I think that that's actually like really important to say, because like we are dealing with mysticism here, and anything is possible. And it's really important to remember that, like, it may not be physically manifested now, but it is in some point in time, and we are pulling ourselves towards it. When we give our energy to that, it psychically aligns us with whatever we're pulling ourselves towards, or whatever we want to manifest, and we pull ourselves towards it. Or, you know, you can be floated toward it if it is aligned with you. But also it's important that we actually just do the things that we have to do in order to get aligned, you know, and to get to that point, and stay in that energy. Yeah, so that's exactly what I meant by like getting aligned. But so, in a still deeper sense, whether or not the symbol should suggest a competitive spirit at work is questionable, because it's a swimming race, and the stimulation that comes from a group effort towards a spiritual. Well, yeah, I mean, anyways, I for one say that like those sorts of things, competition is just kind of like a part of who we are, because it like spurs us towards growth. However, I think that that is also very capitalistic, and the reality is like that's very like 3D Aries, and we're going with 5D Aries, which is like ascended Eris into Athena, you know, strategic warfare and wisdom. This is a community effort, a collaborative effort to just actualize our potential. And there is an infinite amount of space and resources for everybody. Like, when we operate from that standpoint, like the idea of competition like falls away. And I think that's really important right now, because we need to stay in our own lanes. If it's a swimming race, I kind of feel like actually that's what it's about. It's about staying in your own lane. If you're focused on what other people are doing in their other lanes in your swimming race, you're not really focused on getting to your destination like as quickly as you can. And I want to take, like, obviously this swimming race, it has to do with like, I mean, competition, it has like a lot of 3D stuff going on here, right? It has this idea of a timetable. It has this idea of like value and hierarchy of best to worst or whatever, like, you know, But that's not really, it's not about the end goal. It's really just about staying in your lane and constantly progressing towards what you're working towards. It's about the journey. And, you know, it's just not worth comparing other people or our journeys to anybody else's journeys. Okay, so at the biological level, a host of spermatozoa are swimming toward, and I also just want to say that, like, in terms of our wellness and stuff, like, anyway, at the biological level, a host of spermatozoa are swimming toward the ovum, and each presses on toward the goal, the act of impregnation. A seeker after spiritual rebirth actually does not strive alone. It is the collective who, acting through the most advanced individuals of the race of Homo sapiens, is taking a step toward rebirth or toward a new mutation. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, if we don't press ever onward evolutionarily, it's not about like being better than other animals or anything. It's really just about innovation and activation and growth, you know? And so we can speak to Uranus here in Aries retrograde in the 5th house. And I really feel like that's what that's speaking to. And with it retrograde, I feel like what's being said is like, we have to work against our primal instinct, which you know, is impressed upon by trauma. Our nature may be unknowable. I do believe that human nature is actually unknowable because we have been socialized, like, you know what I mean? And so there are only really morally and ethically questionable ways of figuring that out through the scientific method of experimentation, like leaving children on an island by themselves, you know, like literally making a human adult's mind a blank slate and having them and another human like be on this island and procreate. There's no way that we can replicate the experience of being that tabula rasa of John Locke. And that idea of tabula rasa has been coming up a lot for me. It's like blank slate. And our slate has been wiped clean. So it's really about what we do with the slate that matters. And if we're going to choose to go forward with all of the myriad traumas that we have sustained across the eons as a Homo sapien race, where all of the human story is encoded into each and every single one of our DNA somehow, some way, depending on what our role was, and also the human story of the earth that we come from, like, we have to choose to evolve higher. We have to choose to not be Luddites, but progress for the sake of our wellness and our not just survival, but us to thrive, because it goes beyond a survival instinct. It goes to the intuition that is seeking not to survive because that's like a very low vibrational primal iteration of self. And once we hand that over to a power greater than us, and we hand that over to the unseen, we hand that over to spirit, the universe, with faith, we hand that root chakra, those root chakra needs over, you know, we're doing what we need to do, we're doing our best, but, you know, there's just stuff that it's unknowable for us and we can only do our best, and we just have to let synchronicity do its work. When we do that, we can focus on striving ever onward towards self-actualization. And so we're gonna operate within Maslow's hierarchy of I'm gonna pull up Maslow's hierarchy for y'all, and I'm gonna talk about it a little so that you can understand. Oh, not that. And I'm gonna make a new share. So yes, like once we hand over our basic needs, like we're doing all that we can to fulfill them, but trust that we're always going to be taken care of as long as like we are not standing in the way of ourselves being taken care of. And that has so much to do. You know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to show you both that screen and the chart, because I think that just is going to make a lot more sense, because I do want to go between them. Yeah. So what we're talking about here is Uranus retrograde in Aries in the 5th house. And that has to do with how we go about, you know, how our pride and like what we create in the world and all those sorts of things, our productivity in that way, like our social relationships, you know, how we go through the world expressing ourselves, and how we're received is gonna, you know, have something to do with this too. But Uranus retrograde in Aries, what it is that we are doing that contributes, and it is about evolution, it is about advancement, and it is about that, doing things differently, like radically differently, and how we see ourselves, our self-image, like has so much to do with that too. Like, I have had a lot of stuff coming up about imposter syndrome and just being challenged in that regard and not trusting that I will get to where I need to be because it doesn't look exactly how I want it to look right now. But like, if I receive all of the blessings right now and I'm not prepared for them, I will squander them. It's like, you know, somebody who's always been really irresponsible and they get like a huge chunk of money, right? Like immediately, like people who win the lottery, they don't know how to be financially savvy and they end up like squandering their money. That's actually a very common story, versus somebody who works towards getting their money. And we're using money here because it is a form of, it does give us a certain level of access, and it is a form of currency. But what we're talking about here is spiritual and energetic currency. And if you want to be thinking constantly about, oh, it has to do with money, let me tell you, at some level there is an interaction between those things, but ultimately when it comes down to, you know, doing the work and receiving the blessing and the reward, that is a lifestyle. That is an energy. That is a feeling, a sensation. It's not about the material, because the material is finite. This is about infinite access to prosperity, wealth, abundance, of liberation and freedom. We can access whatever material things we want once we get into that space. But if we have all the material things and we're not in that space, we will always feel like we're in bondage, because we will be in bondage. If you can remember that you are the sun, the crowned, crowned in your heavenly glory, you know, you are a representation, the divine spark lives inside of you. You are a child of the divine. Each and every single one of us is. So if you can remember that and actualize that in everything that you do, the universe will reflect that back to you by removing the things that do not relate and correlate and making more space for that which does. So once we have these things, we're doing as much as we can, and it just like, we can't do anymore. It's important to recognize when we cannot do anymore and stop pushing against a brick wall. A change of perspective is then necessary. With Gemini in the 7th house, or 7th house in Gemini, I see this as equanimity. being reached. And we have Libra in the 11th house. And that feels very auspicious to me. Equanimity being reached. We have Neptune retrograde in Aquarius. In the 3rd house, our relationships, once again, are impacted by that. It's okay to be different than your community around you and the people that you are in relation to. If they don't get it, that's fine, because somebody is going to get it. And the more that you keep putting yourself out there, the more you will attract the people who get it and who are for you. Then we can start moving towards, like, if honestly, because the safety needs and psychological needs, like if you're out of your mind because you're obsessed with your ego and you don't, because you are perhaps warped by trauma, and you can be in a space of safety and not even recognize that you're safe because mentally, like, and this is psychological needs, but it's supposed to say physical needs. So good thing I didn't post this, but mentally you're not well, you're not stable, you're not grounded. And that is going to keep you from understanding that your basic needs are being met. We can't get to the psychological needs of esteem needs and belongingness needs if we are living in this primal feral space. And so we are being called here to remove fear and step into faith, lean into faith that things are changing for the better, which they are with this new moon. It's a beginning, it's a new start. And with this Aries, the way that we, like, you know, the cultivation of our life is different. Are we being warlike and inviting more war and battle and contention into our lives? Are we being more, or are we being more loving, compassionate, caring, and inviting that into our lives? Are we exercising boundaries? So there is a structure around what is coming in and what's going out. We press onwards towards self-actualization instead of keeping all of our energy here. We press onwards to here, because those things will be fulfilled if our focus is here. Trust and believe. If we center the spiritual life, and the spiritual life is about self-actualization. And if we center the spiritual life, all of that stuff will be fulfilled, because we will subconsciously be filling all of those cups. That's where the actual trickle down happens. Right? Okay. The personal ego-centered ambition to succeed and to be first is indeed a sign of expectable spiritual failure. At this 4th stage, we are confronted with the problem of interpretation. Is not ambition a subtle form of deviation under the pressure of ancient karma and the competitive spirit so valued by our civilization, a sign of failure to understand the deeper reality of existence? What is needed is emulation, not competition. Well, I need to know the definition of that word, because the way that I know it, I don't effort to match or surpass a person or achievement, typically by imitation. Okay. Yeah, we should all be working towards this and giving it our best shot, is what's being said here. And then we have Venus entering Sagittarius on the 7th. Which I don't think sidereally that's what is actually going to be happening. Sidereally, let me stop sharing and I will check the ephemeris table. So the moon on the 26th will enter Aquarius, and I feel like our feelings are just going to really be progressed. Like, you know, the energy that we have been putting into everything that we've been doing is going to shift at that time. And I feel like it's going to be like around the 3rd of October is when I think that we will receive that. But Venus will actually be entering Sagittarius on the 24th of October. So it's about yeah, I mean it's a like 2.5. Now it's almost 3-week difference, about 21 days difference between the different signs. So Venus is actually going to enter Sagittarius sidereally on the 24th. Then we have Saturn going direct in Aquarius on the, well, it says on the 11th of October. Yeah, but I want to make sure I'm pretty sure it's actually in Capricorn. Yeah, obviously, these are the things that are important for us to know. And this is kind of why we do it together. Venus is going to be, Saturn's going to be going direct. And that's important because, let me share my screen. Saturn retrograde has really been asking us to slow down, asking us to be grounded and to get real. And with Neptune retrograde, it's also like bringing our fears to surface, bringing how we've been out of alignment to surface, like showing us like, you've been playing games. So it's going to be a wrap up of that energy around the 11th. That shadow energy, though, is still going to be playing out, at least I feel like until like the 30th. Around then, like that shadow energy is still going to be playing out. And across from one another, we making a trine, we have Mars specifically, but it's like the Mars and the Sun are kind of conjunct at 23 degrees of Virgo, and 23 and 22, they're almost conjunct applying. So Mars is like bringing that energy. It's like incoming with the Sun, and Mercury's right there too, and it's all in Virgo. And so I feel like we're fired up for our healing. We're fired up for things to go differently. And there's going to be a lot of reconciliations when this happens, because people are really starting to see for the first time, like, wow, like, this is what I really did. Like, this is bringing, like, all of Libra season is about being brought to task and to see ourselves clearly in the mirror. You know, and how that happens, like, if we have a funhouse mirror in our minds, people are going to be telling us like, no, like you need to soften up. Like this is, you're bugging. You see something like body dysmorphia type stuff. Like, oh, you see that, no one else sees that. And you need to do differently about that. Like I said, doing differently with the new moon in Virgo, do differently about that, because like, with Virgo and the new moon, it really is about our healing and how we can be of service to the collective. And in this way, with it also being like the new moon tropically in Libra, I feel like it's how do we care for ourselves? How do we meet all of our needs so that we can meet the needs of others? Like when we have like, okay, I'll share both of the screens again. When this is all fulfilled, that's when we have that trickle. Then, okay, so if you imagine the flower of life, this is the center, and then these exist around the center, you know, and When we're striving towards this, all of these will come up at a certain time to be handled, and maybe they might even, some of them come up at the same time, and we need to deal with them. We need to handle them. You know, we need to give them the attention that they need, the healing attention that they need. And then what happens is we have more energy to give to others. 3 has to do with relationships with others. 7 has to do with relationships with others. And 11 has to do with relationships with others. And no doubt they are very magical numbers. Relationships with others, that has to do with the collective. And y'all know for the past however long, we keep talking about like how if we're not good, like our relationship with others is, and everything around us is dependent upon our relationship with ourselves. And if we're not good, then none of our relationships are going to be good. They can only be good to the degree, they can only be healthy, they can only be well, they can only prosper and thrive to the degree that we are. So with this new moon, it's really about understanding like how we can show up for ourselves enough to do that work for others, how we can heal ourselves so that we can give that healing away to others, because that is what needs to be done. And it can't be about, oh, I don't want people to know that like I have gone through this because that's like embarrassing. Well, they're going through stuff too. And if we can all be of service to one another and let each other know, and that's exactly what this degree, Virgo 19 degrees, is about. If we can be of service to others and let each other know what's up, what we're going through, we can heal collectively. But as long as you're being selfish and worrying only about your own self-image and appearing better than everybody else and perfect, which isn't real, that's some colonizer BS, then it's never going to get to a healthy space. You feel me? We have to be willing to speak from our heart. We have to be willing to tell the truth. Okay? So that's all. Connecting with this Saturn retrograde in Capricorn at the final degrees, and it's about to go direct, and it's going to be direct until sometime early next year. Saturn spends a lot of time retrograde. Yes, and we like, and it is about like learning discipline. And so the ways in which we've learned to discipline ourselves, the ways in which we've learned to set up structures in our lives, it's very important to start seeding that energy with this new moon in Libra. It's very important to be orienting ourselves towards actualization of the lessons. So whatever we feel that we need to fill up on is what is going to be coming up in Libra season. If it's peace, it's serenity, it's whatever. That's what we need to fill up on. How do we actualize that? How do we be of service to fulfillment of that need? And it's making a trine to the moon in Scorpio, which is in the 5th house with Venus in the South Node. And that's really about how we are disempowering ourselves with the South Node and Venus conjunct one another. What degree are they at? 9 degrees of Scorpio? Oh. 0 degrees. No. Venus is at 9 degrees. Yeah, it's 9 degrees of Scorpio. Let's pull up the Sabian symbol for that. Scorpio, I kind of actually see as like the most mature in a way, but Pisces is both the least mature and the most mature, because to me, it represents a portal. Pisces isn't 0 and it's not 12. It's actually an infinity sign. So Scorpio at 9 degrees is scene 15. Communion. Of course, it's about coming together. And when we're holding on to the past and all of the past abuses, all of the past transgressions, and especially if it's all like little stuff that happened and it hasn't happened since a decade or 20 years ago, but you're still holding on to it, like you got to do this shadow work and let it go, because that is what is keeping you vibrating here. You're just so concerned about here, the physical needs. I know it says psychological, but it's meant to say physical. You're so concerned with this. You're so concerned with this. You're not realizing that you're not living there anymore. And it's time for you to center yourself on self-actualization, and everything else will come into fruition because that's what you're working towards. Scorpio, a dentist at work. And I do feel like this is important because the teeth are like, some of the mouth is one of the most important parts of the body. It is an entrance and it is an exit. Obviously, it's an orifice. So it has to do with our throat chakra, which connects us with the world around us, you know, and it also has to do with imbibing. So our teeth are very important. If your teeth are messed up, it can really destroy your life. Overcoming the negative results of social practices and ego cravings. I described this to somebody. One of my clients is like, okay, if you're eating like candy, you know, because you're hungry, you want a real meal, so you're just eating candy. That's a terrible idea. You're messing up your teeth. It's empty calories. It's not even actually going to fill you. Sure, it might taste good in the moment, but like you're hurting yourself. So if it's not time for the meal yet, and you know that you're like waiting for your favorite meal ever, your favorite like auntie prepared your favorite meal, you know, for me, I'm thinking about it this way because I'm Liberian and my favorite food is palala sauce and fufu. And so like my favorite auntie who all like knows how to like F it up in the kitchen, right? Like they are working in the kitchen on making my fufu and palala sauce. And it's about to be, it's not just like box fufu. It's like they actually pounded the plantain into a ball, you know, traditional, really going for it, right? And I have to wait, but I'm hungry now. I need a snack. Like I need something to hold me over. My stomach is growling. My head's getting a little bit tight, right? I'm getting a little bit uncomfortable. I'm not like, the wise thing to do isn't to sit there and eat like a handful of candy. The wise thing to do is to eat a clementine, eat an apple, in fact, because that has fiber and it has carbs. Eat an apple with some peanut butter because that has protein. Nourish myself. Apples are a little bit hard on my teeth personally, but I have very sensitive teeth. So, but nourish yourself and recognize that. That's also an important thing to recognize, is like, as highly sensitive people, that doesn't just show up emotionally, and like energetically. Like, one, yes, we will get more tired and need more rest than other people, because we are like experiencing so much sensory, like we really experience sensory overload more than other people do. So we need more rest. And we need more carbs and calories. But we also need to be living a healthy balance where we're working that stuff off. But and like, if it's too hard for my teeth, like if a situation is too hard for me, I need to know that about myself. Like I can sometimes eat apples, but not all the time. I don't always, like certain types of apples I can eat. And there are certain types of apples I don't like to eat. And that is just to say, like, an apple is not a real meal. And I cannot get by on apples alone. So one, different types of relationships need to be valued equally as the full meal, because that, like, that other relationship is going to be getting me towards the divine counterpart integration. The friendships, the flings where it's not disrespectful, but it's not meant to be. So we just operate in the only harmonic calibration or vibration that we can, which might be friends, which might be dating, which might be, you know, a little bit of physical intimacy, whatever that looks like for that given relationship. It might be a mentorship, that sort of thing. Whatever that looks like is what it is. In order to properly, and that's what we have to do. We have to like be very conscientious about those things and like nourishing ourselves instead of like, you know, living for those sensory pleasures that last very fleetingly. In order to properly evaluate and interpret this symbol, we should realize the meaning of the teeth. And there's also like the whole the powers in the teeth, like when our teeth are falling out in dreams, like it tends to mean like we feel disempowered in some way. And yes, permanent teeth appear normally at age 7 when, according to some occultists, the personalized individuality of the child, the ego, takes full control of the physical organism. So this is how we go about life, how we choose to go about life, and we don't even know that we've made that choice. But if you think hard enough, you can probably think back to some of those times when we chose to make those choices. And once again, that first house has to do with the primal self, the primal iteration of self. What is trying to be fulfilled? This primal physical need and safety, right? That's what's trying to be fulfilled. And those two things really have to do with like the first chunk of the zodiac, because we're still very nascent. So yes, the first house having to do with primacy, and it is in Cancer, which has to do with house and home. It has to do with our immediate family. Scorpio, I feel like, has a lot more to do with extended family, and then like conscious family, like spirit family is more Pisces. But what are we holding on to in that primal space that's keeping us from actualizing, like, and it could even be like in the relationships with extended family, like that play a role in forming our interactions with ourselves. Like these are institutions further away from us than the family, where we might need to remove some things that we engage with and interact with, because they're keeping us from being able, like that we're holding on to, really, they're keeping us from being able to heal that collective wound and step into being able to connect with the collective. So there's some collective healing going on here. It is about Christ consciousness. It is about compassion and forgiveness for those who have hurt us in the past, so that we don't need to carry that on into the future, because it's disempowering. The teeth are used to tear down foodstuff so they can be digested and assimilated. Social living and cultural patterns impose upon us certain habits of eating, arouse desires for unwholesome food or denatured food, force us perhaps to eat in terse, tense circumstances and hurriedly. This results in tooth decay far more frequently than should be inevitable through aging. The symbol therefore shows us how society and civilization, which may indirectly cause tooth decay, then have to invent means to skillfully repair the damage. And these are the extrapolations that our ego goes through. It's like you could just stop doing the harmful thing, but instead you're going to create new ways to repair that damage, but keep doing the damaging thing. And that does not actually solve the issue. And that is how Western medicine is in general. And so if it's in the medicine, it's in the way that we think too. So really we're going to be asking of us to like show up as the reality of who we are beyond that shadow distortion of ourselves. Show up as you know you are, and those distortions will move, they will clear away, because the shadow cannot abide where the light is. Okay? At this fourth stage of the fivefold sequence, we see once more a hint of technique. Life in society both perverts and repairs, destroys and rebuilds, truly a vicious cycle. People are compelled by social needs to display inventiveness, new ways of going forward, evolution. And this particular evolution is fourth-dimensional, heart-centered, and high heart harmonization. If you are someone who's already ascending into 5D, if you've already been in 4D, you're ascending into 5D. And this is happening here, the crystal ajna clarification, and like this level of consciousness that we're loading into is like stripping away all of that shadow, and we're seeing that light. And it can be really scary to be in our power and to recognize what we are capable of doing, and also to see those things that we felt were keeping us safe are actually hindering us from being able to actualize the self, live the life that we want to live in the dream, right? And so this is about like letting go of fear and being transformed in it. It's radical radical change that's on offer here. And it's going to happen inevitably. We just need to show up for it and stop like fucking ourselves mentally. Okay, so that's what Saturn in Aquarius is going to be bringing. We have Mercury direct and Jupiter direct, and that's actually in Virgo, not Aquarius. So Mercury direct and Libra direct on the 18th, which is, you know, it's like finally, because we have Pluto direct, then Saturn, then Mercury and Jupiter. It's like seriously, finally. The brakes are coming off. We're getting more into the experience of the liberation, because we've been in the process of it and we've been in the mindset of it. But when we're not in the experience of it, because we've been actualizing the experience of it, but when we're not seeing it in the way that we expect, that we want to see it, it can make it feel like it's not really happening, right? And so I'm gonna stop sharing. Let's go to, which one happens first? 5:30 Greenwich Mean Time is when Jupiter goes direct, and 15:17, so 3:17 p.m. GMT is when Mercury goes direct. So we're going to look at that because they'll both already be direct, and the degrees are not going to be any different for Jupiter. At most, a second will be the difference in degree. But so let me share my screen. And okay. We have the sun will finally be in Libra, is what it is saying. This is the 18th, and we know, I think we said the 17th is when, yes, the 17th. So let's talk about sidereal Libra season. Sidereal Libra season starts with a cat's cradle of sorts. It's like a lot of energy mixed up here, and we have one very hard aspect between is it between the sun? Yes, it's between the sun and Pluto, which is going to be entering direct into Capricorn, or it's going to be at 0 degrees and 10 seconds of Capricorn. And it's really important to just remember that you don't get your power from flexing on other people. You don't get your power from disempowering other people. Our power comes from within. Our power center is that divine spark that lives within each and every single one of us. My best friend's mom used to call that a God nugget, like the little nugget of God that's living in all of us. You know, choose to activate that. That's where we get our power from, true power. Freedom comes from that space, right? So we may feel at times like insecure, and we may want to revert back to wanting to go outside of ourselves for validation, you know, because we can make progress and we can backslide. But it's so important to remember with sidereal Libra season that that's not what we've gone through all of this for. That's not what we've been working towards. We need to actually do the work. We need to actually show up for ourselves. And we need to actually be of service to the collective in order to feel ourselves being fulfilled, because service to the collective is service to ourselves. And that reciprocity truly fulfills us and sustains us through very difficult experiences. Oh, interesting. I don't know who that is. Anyway, so yes, that's something that is very important that I'm seeing here. 0 degrees of Capricorn. I mean, that's the start of Capricorn. That is the start of like the transformation of the structures of our lives happening. And we have to show up for it. Don't bring that old peacocking energy, because I do feel like Libra is a peacock. Libra is a peacock because Libra is male energy, and it's the male peacock, it's masculine energy rather, excuse me. And it's the male peacocks that do the spreading of their feathers to like attract a mate. That's the male peacocks that do this. So this masculine energy might make us like want to puff out our chest and be like, yeah, like put on a show, like put on a glamour to make people think that we are anything but what we are. People want you. People want the truth of who you are. So show up as yourself so you can actually attract the energies and the relationships that are for you. Because like, do you want to go through your whole life being somebody that you're not? It's exhausting. And you have to keep track of all the lies that you've told. It's exhausting. But you know what's exhilarating? Living your best life, having harmonious, healthy connections with people that love you and care about you for who you are. And that is what's happening with the moon and Neptune retrograde in the 4th house in Aquarius. This is a reformation of all of those relationships, those fears, those heavy, burdensome fears. This is high heart energy here. This is clearing, like speak your truth. And Libra has to do with the throat chakra, and it's the 7th sign. And so I was thinking about this yesterday, actually, like the 7th sign, Libra, having to do with the throat chakra and like throat chakra clearing and stuff like this. You know, speak your truth. If you're afraid, say you're afraid, but don't like allow the fear to rule you. Acknowledge that it's real, but you don't have to live like that anymore. And that's faith. It doesn't mean that you're not afraid. It doesn't mean that things aren't hard, that things don't hurt. It just means that you're still choosing to live a life that is radically free. And you're still willing to choose to do the radically healing thing for yourself. That's what that means. Okay? We move on to, I mean, that was a lot right there. And we have Neptune retrograde still, because Neptune, I think, goes direct in November. It might not even go direct until February. Let me check. Neptune goes direct in Pisces on the, well, Neptune goes direct in Aquarius on the 1st of December. So we're going to have a lot of fears purging. And the thing to do with that is to meet it with faith and love and care. Okay? And then in Pisces, which is being affected by this energy here, like all those fears that have been embedded in us from our family, from our childhood, that like we're never going to be able to have like certain things that we want in our lives because we didn't have them growing up, or being led and like ruled by and guided by those like childhood traumas or fears or whatever. And they don't even have to be that somebody did anything to you. It could have been like you saw something, or that like it's just whatever has a large impact on you and changes you. You don't need to continue that narrative because the past contracts are dead. And so we have Vertex, Chiron, and Fortuna all in Pisces. And so there is a lot of heart chakra healing going on here, and it is through Vertex houses. And also Chiron retrograde tells us, and Fortuna tell us in this 5th house, healing ourselves, seeing ourselves as like our higher self and actualizing our higher self in the here and now. And the higher self is a higher vibrational self. It is aligned with higher power. It is aligned with the upper dimensions. It is aligned with spiritual principles and foundations. And so when we are operating with, like, when we are actualizing our higher self in this timeline, we bring that down into this timeline. We pull ourselves up into it, but also no, we bring that energy down here. And we're vibrating in that, even though other people may not be vibrating in it. And as we bring that energy down and we call that energy in, I mean, as above, so below, so it doesn't matter how I say it, as we call that energy in, and I do want us to think about that because this is an internal process. So we're calling it in instead of going out and doing. That's the difference. There is a radical reformation of what Aries represents. It is no longer the god of war. It is now integrated with the divine feminine. So it is about cultivation once again. So we cultivate a life of luxury, love, ease, serenity, peace, harmony, which is the key word when dealing with Pisces and Neptune, nuptials, marriage, harmony, harmonizing the universe. That's what I was thinking about, universe, one verse, the vibration that we are putting out into the universe. This has to do with Libra, is what is going to come back to us because Libra is the mirror. That's what's going to come back to us. So that doesn't mean that tough stuff is not going to ever happen, because this is a free will plane and that will always happen. But the reality of it is you don't need to contribute to it. And the more that you actualize your higher self in the here and now, and you bring that in, you shift your own frequency, your own vibration higher. And then therefore you bring that energy to the universe, to the collective. And that's how we are of service. Because we're learning how to be of service in sidereal Virgo season. Wear your crown on your head, keep your head up. Know that you are a divine child of God with the mandate of heaven to do what it is that you were sent here to do, to fulfill your dharma. And that's all that you need to worry about. Word to the new moon in Virgo on the 6th. Meditate on that, realizing what that has to do with anything. And then we have these planets going direct the following day. And I feel like it's Mercury and it's Jupiter, and yeah, I mean, this is just about like expansion and how we go out in the world and like what we call in, you know, and it's really about what I just said. I can't even like make it about anything else. It's about what I just said that it was about. And I get pyrite and green calcite from the Crystal Oracle deck. Call on your core power and live out your heart's desire. Remember that you were empowered by that divine spark that connects you and each and every single one of us to the divine. Call on that, tap into that, tune into that. Love on yourself, treat yourself the way that you want your higher power to treat you, because higher power is just waiting for you to allow yourself to receive the love, the abundance. Yes, you have to clear things and get rid of things in your life, but like that shows the universe, like whatever you do, do it with intention. Show the universe that you're ready. Live out your heart's desire by actually living it. Just live it, just do it. When your heart is asking for something, but you aren't listening, I'm not listening. The heart wants what it wants. The mind wants what it thinks the heart should want. Call on the energy of green calcite to nudge that push and pull in the heart's favor. Don't listen to your mind, listen to your heart, and listen to your gut, your intuition. Because whatever's in the heart, your intuition, your gut will lead you the best way to get there. Your mind's indoctrinated, it's sick. So yeah. And then we have the full moon. And the full moon is going to be in Aries, just as it is tropically. Whew, I am tired. The full moon is in Aries in the third house with Uranus retrograde. It is making an opposition to the sun, obviously, but also to Mars. The sun is in Libra at this point. Then Mars is in Virgo. And yeah, like I just feel like it's about letting go of don't act volatilely at this time, because there may be like triggers. Allow it to shift your perception, but you don't need to act on things, because things are going to align themselves and smooth themselves out the way that they're supposed to be smoothed out. Just trust that like the wave is flowing in your direction, like the river is flowing in your direction. So things are going to get to where they need to be, but you don't need to act out. You don't need to act bombastic and do some crazy stuff. Like the North Node is in Taurus with Dark Moon Lilith, fourth house. This to me means like, I feel like it's going to be family members trying us, and our emotions are going to be heightened in the sign of an already high emotional energy with Aries. Uranus retrograde there. You don't need to put yourself in a position where you're going to compromise your integrity by acting out because somebody wants to suck you down into a trauma cycle or a low vibrational, a karmic cycle. And it might feel really tempting to get emotionally invested in this, but I guarantee you that it's not worth getting emotionally invested in, because it's actually just going to weaken you and rob you of your strength. Okay? It's not worth it at all. Like, it's really not. Because it's all to do with, I see here, South Node in South Node will be retrograde. It usually is anyway, in Scorpio with Venus, and it's in the 10th house. And it has a lot to do with acting in pride, because we feel slighted. We feel like we have been cheated in some way, or someone's trying to take something from us. And it's like this greediness. But when we actualize this energy here, it's about being in our boundaries and not letting people take us out of our character. When people try to go beyond the boundary or pull us out of the boundary, because that getting outside of your character means that you're getting outside of your boundary too. Not that they're crossing your boundary, but you are. When we're operating in a high vibrational Taurian energy, we know that abundance flows to us because we are masters of manifestation and understand that what we put out is what we get back. So don't get mixed up in those old trauma cycles. If that like inner wound, that mother wound especially, gets triggered, and it doesn't actually have to be by your mother, but it could be really by anybody. If it gets triggered, you don't need to slide back into that energy. You need to stay grounded. The sun is in Libra in the 9th house, and the moon is in Aries. And I feel like there's gonna be like, you may want to even be passive aggressive about it, or to gossip, or this even may happen to you where people are being passive aggressive and gossiping about you. But you just have to just be like, yo, the truth speaks for itself, and I don't need to defend the truth. I don't need to over explain myself. Like, the truth will out, as they say in Harry Potter. And I want to actually look at this because this opposition is making a right triangle when both of these planets, the sun and the moon, are making a and also Mars, which is in Virgo, so this is an opportunity for healing, are making a square to Pluto at 0 degrees of Capricorn, 0 degrees and 12 seconds in the 12th house. Act with faith, because you feel triggered and you feel like someone's trying to take something from you, the reality is they can only take it away from you if you allow them to, if you give it to them. That's just what it is. You don't have to, anything ethereal, anything unseen, people can do whatever they want in the physical realm to try to get you to give it to them, but that doesn't mean that you actually have to. Don't let somebody rob you of your joy. This is why I said with the equinox, it's about the frequency of joy and tuning into the frequency of joy. Whatever that looks like, whatever you got to do to get into that frequency, to get into that space is what you got to do. And like really buckle, like really like ground into that, because yeah, it feels like that full moon in Aries, we're coming to the 31st, which is Samhain, and like it is the, you know, and then I think the November 1st, it is All Hallows Eve, and then All Hallows Day, and the Day of the Dead is the 1st of November. And so a lot of those dead bodies are coming up, those zombies, those ghosts of selves past, and, you know, ghosts of past relationships are all coming up right now. And we're being forced to reconcile those things within ourselves, not outside of ourselves, but within ourselves. And so what happens is we really just need to act with compassion, love, and care in regards to all of those situations that may come up, of people returning, people apologizing, people wanting to make it right. Don't have any expectations of anybody, because like, you don't know what's going on inside of them. You don't know what's going on in their head or in their heart. You just have to forgive without like ever expecting to get any recompense. And that's going to give you the spiritual recompense of spiritual liberation and freedom, because otherwise they have control over you still. You know what I mean? I really like this kombucha. Anyway, so that's what I've got for y'all for now. I'm gonna go ahead and end this video, and I just want to say thank you so much for rocking with me. And I'm gonna do the spread for October, what energies we can expect to come in, you know, what we should do about it, what we should avoid, and how we can, well, so what energies, what are the overarching energies? How can we be of service to our higher iteration of self and the collective in this way, what we should avoid, and the outgoing energy. And then the next video after that will be the clarifiers. So second tier gets the spread and third tier gets the clarifiers. I'll see y'all in there.